Hello everyone, and welcome to Outriders New Horizon. In today's video we're going to explore an Anomaly Power Technomancer build focusing on the tool of distraction and more specifically in the RPG, so thus making a Rocketman build. This build has extremely good AoE, decent single target DPS and extremely good survivability with zero investment in survivability modes. But without any further delay, let's have a closer look at the build, starting with the skills. I made a lot of tests using most of the skills. The tool of distraction is our main source of DPS, so this is a must. The pain launcher is a must because we're using the legendary Grim Inventor set in order to refill our rocket launcher. And I initially started testing with Fixing Wave and refilling our magazine. However, I didn't find so good increase in single target DPS, so after some testing I decided to go with a Blighted Turret because this offers Toxic, Improve Vulnerable and Extreme Survivability, because applying Toxic to the enemies and with so high skill life leads we have, the tick from the Toxic damage is actually what makes us survive very easy. Let's have a closer look at the armor emotes we're using. 3 pieces of the Grim Inventors, the chest, the head and the legs. All of 3 have Anomaly Power, cooldown reduction and skill life leech. For the epic pieces I'm using something with Anomaly Power, cooldown reduction and status power. Status power actually scales very well with the Toxic and the Improve Vulnerable we're doing. That being said, you can have some skill life leaks instead, but I do believe status power is very important to maximize survivability and DPS. For maximum damage, I'm using also the Euthanizer and the Radical Therapy to deal 40% extra damage to enemies afflicted by Toxic. And I'm also using Bang for Your Buck to have 11 shots for the RPG, and this way it's much easier to refill it and keep it running. The weapons and mods we're using aren't affecting the RPG apart from the attributes. I do recommend to have something with status power, skill life leech, that's why I like the Damascus offering, it has the best stats, and just in case the RPG will run out, which shouldn't be the issue, we'll have a Claymore Torrent at Sando Comment. But you don't have to go with this, you can go with an epic piece that just has status power, skill life leech and another random attribute. Secondary weapon and sidearm are also irrelevant. I have the Guillotine or the Anomaly Shotgun just in case I run out of RPG, so I can finish off a couple of elites. However, as I told you, it's not necessary. Our main source of DPS, 99%, will be the RPG launcher. Let's have a closer look at the talents we're using, focusing on the Demolisher tree. Now, I have to unfortunately avoid the Disturbance Coating to lose 15% resistance pierce, because I need to take Adrenalizing Antenna to have 30% increase Anomaly Power every time we use the Blighted Turret, and I have to go with the last perk to have the Tech Bond, 50% extra Anomaly Power, and we're using an Ordnance skill. And I do like the Wipeout, it deals a lot of damage to finish off the elites that are below 30% health. And I'm going to the Tech Summon. I do take the Aneta Plates for increased resistance, Exposing Toxic and Marked for Execution. This way you maximize your single target DPS, because without this you will deal around 60% less damage to elites. So instead of, let's say, 800,000 to 1 million shots with your RPG, we will deal 500 to 600,000. Now moving on to the second variation of the build, which personally I don't like, although it has its merits. It's much more sustained and you can never run out of the tool of distraction, because we're using Fixing Wave to replenish our ammo in the magazine, and that works with the RPG. So instead of the Blighted Turret and sacrificing a little bit of survivability because we no longer have the Toxin and a lot of single target DPS against the elites, because we don't have the increased damage against Toxic and we don't have the Improved Vulnerable, then you can go with the Fixing Wave. Now, the only changes we make, replace everything that increases Toxic and apply the Quartermaster, the tier 3 mode that activating the skill replenishes the current weapon to the magazine, and we also replace with Unstoppable Force to increase an Anomaly Power a little bit, because now we have actually 30% resistance pierce compared to 15 because of our talents. We once again focus on the Demolisher, however, we do take the Disturbance Coating number 2 to get a little bit of more resistance pierce. We don't need to take the Adrenalizing Antenna, and we take both nodes to decrease the cooldown of the Fixing Wave. Now I haven't added the mod to further decrease the fixing wave by 20% because I believe it's not necessary. 11.6 seconds to fully replenish the magazine for the Tool of Destruction is more than enough, and you will also have the Pain Launcher to replenish the ammo and the Tool of Destruction, so you will never run out of Tool of Destruction. Instead, I wanted to maximize my DPS to have more resistance spears, and I do recommend to have the armored unit, because every time you use the Pain Launcher, you will get a 50% armor increase, and you will get from 50% mitigation to 60% something to help you survive against gunners and elites, because you don't have the toxic, and it's a little more challenging even with a fixing wave to survive in certain situations. So what works best between the two builds? The first and my favorite in my opinion, using the Blighted Turret, which I do recommend to try, has better survivability because of the toxic, better single target DPS, but it has a cost. It's not as consistent as the second build with the fixing wave. If you're not careful with the Pain Launcher and you kill all the tiny enemies with the RPG and you don't plan ahead, you may run out of the RPG. And if you run out of the RPG, there is a high risk of dying or losing a lot of DPS because the Tool of Destruction has more than 20 seconds cooldown. However, if you are a little careful, you plan a little ahead and you see the enemies in the minimap and the Pain Launcher hits a lot of them, you will be able to replenish a lot of ammo and you don't need to go with the second option. Even when fighting elites and bosses, if you plan ahead a little bit, you don't need the fixing wave. However, if this is your first time trying the build and find yourself running out of RPG shots using only the Pain Launcher, I do recommend to switch the build a little bit using the fixing wave until you get used to only using the Pain Launcher, which in my opinion, the first build is the superior one. I did do much better timers using the Blighted Turret. I did survive quite easier because applying toxic to the enemies and you can pretty much spam the Blighted Turret with 4.8 seconds cooldown with zero investment. And actually the toxic helps a lot by debuffing the enemies, that's why we have the status power. About the rotation in both cases, you just have to keep the RPG up and running. That's why we have the Pain Launcher. You need to point it out in the minimap in the direction with the most red dots without so many obstacles. That's how I do it, and that's how I managed to never run out of the Tool of Destruction. The good thing is you can just keep shooting the RPG, place the Pain Launcher. As you keep shooting, you will get pack ammo and you can just get a couple of free shots, because if the Pain Launcher hits more enemies in the back, you will replenish the ammo in the magazine while shooting and you will get 2 or 3 free shots. And that's why I do believe you don't need the fixing wave. After a while I got used to the Pain Launcher only, and I managed to run out of the RPG only once because I wasn't paying attention to the minimap and I missed my Pain Launcher shots. And that was it for today's video. I really hope this will help you build your own Technomancer Rocketman build, and I plan to make a more in-depth analysis video why the Toxic Pain Launcher works better, some more tips why I chose these mods, what other mods I tried and why they don't work so well with the ones I chose. So feel free to like if you liked, and you can subscribe to stay tuned for more upcoming videos for Outriders New Horizon and other video games. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.